Hi, thanks for clicking on this video. If you're here, either you're already a fan of Dark Souls and are not so patiently awaiting the next entry, or you haven't taken the dive and are wondering what's so special about this particular series of games. If you're the former, hopefully this will be interesting enough to shed some new light on an already beloved game. And if you're the latter, maybe I can answer that question for you. Something I've heard asked is, if Dark Souls is so frustratingly hard, why play it? And honestly, that's a good question. I'm going to attempt to answer that by presenting two cases. First, the mechanics. Now, these are at first a little inscrutable. The game doesn't take any pains to explain much of anything to you whenever you first start up. There are a few messages scrawled about in a tutorial area, but even those only spell out the most basic of mechanics, such as running, locking on, and swinging your weapon. Dark Souls 1 will even throw you into what is seemingly an unwinnable boss fight, with a single message scrawled saying, "Run." If you take the time to actually read it, that is. Shortly after this, though, you're thrown into a world full of mystery and questions, and an at first unforgiving sense of difficulty. If you poke around long enough, though, you soon find that the combat is sensibly paced and fair, but rarely forgiving. I regularly find myself overwhelmed by what could be considered low-level enemies if I don't keep my wits about me. After some time, you begin to develop a sense of mastery over not only the combat, but the world itself. Many talk about the hours they spent in Dark Souls' opening areas, only to find themselves sprinting through in minutes in subsequent playthroughs. This is something that Dark Souls has over most RPGs in general. How many times do you want to play through something like Skyrim again, only to find that the early game content is spoiled in the light of the end game play? Another thing Dark Souls has in spades is customization and character builds. Every new weapon, shield, and spell can unlock a different avenue of play for your current run, or give you an idea for a future run you might want to do. Armor and weapons are also linked hand in hand with the story. Item descriptions are not only important for helping understand what a particular key is used for, but can also shed light on the world and the people around you. Similar to the mechanics, the story of Dark Souls respects the player by letting you discover it piece by piece. It presents itself either by item descriptions or by the scant cast of NPCs throughout Lordran. Item descriptions are the closest thing the game has to a reliable narrator, because the other characters all have their own agendas and biases, leading you astray, and sometimes unintentionally so. Another similarity that the story has to the mechanics is that it is unrelenting, and this only seems to get stronger with each entry. In the beginning of Dark Souls 2, you're told directly that you will die countless times, lose massive amounts of experience, and when you finally do reach your goal, you'll forget why you even began in the first place. But you see, death is not loss in these games. It is a valuable and an integral part of the gameplay. And even if you lose countless souls to a boss over and over, you never lose progress. See, the reason I think that we keep coming back again and again is because even through death, your character marches on to an ambiguous ending that is ultimately left up to you to decide if it's good or bad. That's not to say that the ending or the writing in general is a cop-out or that it's lazy, but it's because that these themes are so basic that when faced with the insurmountable odds that this sets before us, we can still push on. And I know you're probably saying that this is just a game, don't take it too seriously. It's impossible to play through something like this, come out on the other side, and not be reminded of the poem, "Do not go gentle into that good night." Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Now, not everybody reads that much into this game. Like I said before, a lot of people will play through this just because the mechanics are so impeccable and the gameplay loop is so good that it's satisfying enough on its own that you don't need these incredible storylines from these characters. But there is something deeper here. There's a reason that these games click with a community like this, that countless YouTube videos and podcasts are made regularly, and that people talk about these games to each other in a special way that I just don't see happening with any other game series right now. I think that there is something very special here. Hopefully that this video in some way helped you see that, and maybe it convinced you in some small way to take another look at these games. I would suggest maybe that you start with Dark Souls 2. There are no direct narrative ties between the two games, and the ones that are there, they're buried deep within the item descriptions and the lore conjecture that comes through, like I said before, podcasts and YouTube videos. So it's not something that you'll be necessarily missing out on. The gameplay is just a bit more forgiving, and the curve is a bit easier on you than the first Dark Souls. I personally think so. Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed this video in some small way. I hope you found it interesting at least. And I think the next project we'll be putting up here is a Demon Souls playthrough, leading into a blind playthrough of Dark Souls 3. So until then, praise the sun, everybody.